The Douglas F3D Sky, later redesignated F-10 Sky, is an American twin-engined, mid-wing jet fighter aircraft designed and manufactured by the Douglas Aircraft Company. It was designed in response to a 1945 United States Navy requirement for a jet-powered, radar-equipped, carrier-based night fighter. Douglas designed the aircraft around the bulky air intercept radar systems of the era, resulting in a wide, deep, and roomy fuselage that accommodated its two-man crew. An initial contract was issued to Douglas on the 3rd of April 1946. The F-3D prototype performed its maiden flight on the 23rd of March 1948. During June 1948, a production contract for 28 F-3D production aircraft was received. It was equipped with a Westinghouse and a PQ-35 fire control system, which incorporated 3 separate radars and was an essential component of its night fighter operations. The F-3D saw service with the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps. Its primary mission was to locate and destroy enemy aircraft at night. The Sky was not produced in great numbers, yet it achieved numerous firsts in its role as a night fighter during the Korean War, where the type frequently escorted Boeing B-29 Superfortresses on night bombing missions. While it never achieved the fame of the North American F-86 Sabre, it downed several Soviet-built MiG-15s as a night fighter over Korea. It only sustained a single air-to-air loss against a Chinese MiG-15, which occurred on the night of the 29th of May 1953. A total of 237 F-3D-2s were completed before production was terminated on the 23rd of March 1952. The Sky played an important role in the development of the radar-guided AM-7 Sparrow missile, which led to further guided air-to-air missile developments. It also served as an electronic warfare platform in the Vietnam War as a precursor to the EA-6A Intruder and EA-6B Prowler. The aircraft is sometimes unofficially called Skyknight, dropping the second K. The unusual, portly profile earned it the nickname Willie the Whale. For some Vietnam War U.S. Marine veterans have referred to the Skyknight as Drott, whose meaning becomes obvious when read backwards. Additional citation is needed. This may be in reference to its age, unflattering looks, or the low-slung air intakes that made it vulnerable to foreign object damage. 5. Unreliable source, design and development, origins. The F-3D was not intended to be a typical sleek and nimble dogfighter, but as a standoff night fighter, being outfitted with a powerful radar system and a second crew member. It originated in 1945 with a U.S. Navy requirement for a jet-powered, radar-equipped, carrier-based night fighter. The Douglas team led by Ed Heinemann designed the aircraft around the bulky air intercept radar systems of the time, placing the pilot and radar operator in side-by-side seating. 6-7. The result was an aircraft with a wide, deep, and roomy fuselage. Aviation author Joe Copalman observed that the F-3D was a relatively conventional aircraft, despite its use of jet propulsion, the design team having opted for features such as a straight wing and traditional tail unit. 8. A large and relatively flat forward windshield was used. While not conducive to high-speed flight, it provided distortion-free external visibility, something that was particularly valued for a night fighter at that time. 9. The design team opted not to use tip tanks due to the fuselage already permitting sufficient fuel capacity and the difficulty involved in properly combining the tanks with a folding wing mechanism. The use of ejection seats was also considered but decided against, as their inclusion would have necessitated a jettisonable canopy, made pressurizing the cockpit more difficult, and added weight. 9. Instead, an escape tunnel was used, similar to the arrangement used in the Douglas A3 Sky Warrior. 6-10. The stick was extendable so that more force could be exerted upon it by the pilot as a fallback measure in the event of a hydraulic failure. 9. The F-3D was selected over a competing submission, Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation's G75 twin-seat, 4-engined, Westinghouse J-30 powered night fighter designed similar layout to their Tiger Cat, leading to an initial contract being issued on the 3rd of April 1946. The U.S. Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics also issued a contract to Grumman for two G-75s where designation XF-9 F-1 experimental aircraft on the 11th of April 1946 in case the Skyknight encountered problems. Shortly thereafter, Grumman recognized that the G-75 would not be a successful aircraft. Instead, the company had been working on a completely different single-engine day fighter, initially known as the G-79. It would later become the Grumman F9 F-10. 11M1. Into flight. Maintenance on an APQ-35 radar of an F3D in Korea. 1953. On the 23rd of March 1948, the F3D performed its maiden flight from Douglas L2 facility with test pilot Russell Thaw at the controls, and while wind tunnel testing had indicated the need for aerodynamic changes, such as the addition of wing fences, flight testing provided these to be unnecessary. Flight testing continued at L2 until October 1948, after which the 3 prototypes were transported to Muroc Air Force Base, later renamed Edwards Air Force Base, to participate in service trials. These units were powered by a pair of Westinghouse J3 for turbojets, capable of 3,000 lbf 13 kilonewtons thrust, which were installed underneath the roots of then standard straight wings of the early jet era. During June 1948, a production contract for 28 F3D production aircraft, powered by improved J3 engines, was issued. Relatively little external changes were made between the prototype and production aircraft, save for the enlargement of the engine nacelles. 15. The first production aircraft made its first flight on the 13th of February 1950. 16. That same month, shore-based testing was concluded. 9. As a night fighter that was not expected to be as fast as smaller daylight fighters, the expectation was to have a stable platform for its radar system and the 420mm cannon mounted in the lower fuselage. Yet, the F3D was capable of outrunning a MiG-15 jet fighter. 17. The fire control system in the F3D was the Westinghouse N. APQ-35. The N. APQ-35 was advanced for the time, a combination of 3 different radars, each performing separate functions: an N. APS-1 search radar, an N. APG-6 tracking radar, both located in the nose, and an N. APS-28 tail warning radar. 18. The N. APS-21 was capable of detecting aircraft at distances up to 20 miles away, while the N. APG-6 could achieve a weapons lock up to 2.25 miles away, and the N. APS-28 was effective up to 10 miles away. 819. The complexity of this vacuum tube-based radar system, produced before the advent of semiconductor electronics, required intensive maintenance to keep it operating properly. The F3D was followed by the F3D, which was first ordered in August 1949. This model was intended to have Westinghouse J46 engines in enlarged nacelles to replace the J3 engines of the F3D. However, on account of development problems with the J46, the F3D was initially fitted with J3 engines instead. Higher thrust J3 engines were installed later, noticeably increasing the aircraft's performance. 16 additional changes on the F3D included the incorporation of an improved Westinghouse N. APQ-36 fire control system, autopilot, air conditioning, and a bulletproof windscreen. 2021, a total of 237 F3D-2s were built prior to production being terminated on the 23rd of March 1952. At one stage, a higher performance F3D-3 variant, equipped with swept wings and J46 engines, was planned. Yet work was cancelled after the J46's development was so troublesome that officials opted to terminate work. Operational history: F3D-2S of VMFN 513 at Kunsan Air Base, Korea. In 1953, Korean War. The 28 F3D-1s produced were primarily used to train F3D crews. As such, this model did not see combat in the Korean War. 22. The F3D Sky was only operated in the Korean theater by United States Marine Corps' USMC land-based squadrons, beginning in August 1952. 23-24. The first aircraft to arrive in Korea were initially unable to commence operations due to a lack of gun barrel extensions, which were necessary to fire the aircraft's cannon safely. The first aircraft to be modified was on the 9th of August 1952, permitting live operations to commence in the following weeks. 25. Prior to this, exercises were conducted to develop closer coordination with ground controllers, upon whom the F3D-2s were dependent during their nighttime operations. 26. From the onset of operations, hostile jamming from inside North Korea proved to be effective against onboard radar, 27. This factor contributed to Skype pilots often experiencing difficulty in attempting to close in, identify, and lock onto suspected hostile aircraft. Ground-based anti-aircraft artillery, which was often equipped with radar-guided searchlights, proved to be more of a threat to night-time operations over Korea than the occasional MiG-15. Such aircraft often acted as bait, attempting to draw the Skype into coordinated traps. 28. According to Copalman, the APS-28 tail warning radar unit proved quite advantageous in terms of situational awareness. 29. The Skype was responsible for downing more enemy aircraft over Korea than any other single type of naval aircraft. 30. The first air-to-air victory was recorded on the night of the 2nd of November 1950 by a U.S. F-3D piloted by Major William T. Stratton Jr. and his radar operator, Master Sergeant Hansi Hogland of VMFN. 513 Flying Nightmares. 31. Major Stratton shot down what he believed was a Yakovlev Yak-15, even though no Yak-15s were reported in Korea. 5. Which was the first successful night radar interception by a jet of another jet. 32. The Skype claimed its first MiG-15 kill on the 8th of November 1952, when Captain O.R. Davis and Warrant Officer D.F. Ding Fessler down a MiG-15 northwest of Pyongyang. 32. U.S. MC pilot Lt. Joseph Corvey and his radar operator Sergeant N. George set another record with the Skype on the night of the 10th of December 1952, when they downed the first aircraft by an aircraft with a radar track and lock-on, and without. They performed the feat by using their radar to lock onto a Polikarpov Po-2 biplane. They were also credited with another probable kill that night. 33. In January 1953, the number of U.S. MC Skype in Korea was doubled to 24. This increase allowed them to effectively escort B-29 Superfortresses on night bombing missions. 30 for 35. On the 12th of January 1953, an F-3D to a VMFN 513 that was escorting B-29s on a night bombing mission was vectored to a contact and shot down the 4th aircraft by a Skype. 17. By the end of the war, Skype had claimed 6 enemy aircraft, 1 Polikarpov Po-2, 1 Yakovlev Yak-15, and 4 MiG-15s. 31. Squadron members of VC-4 for foreign at NAS Atlantic City, prior to Korean deployment with Carrier Air Group 4, VC-4. DT-44 and Squadron patch during Korea deployment. In May 1953, Composite Squadron for Detachment for 4 was deployed to Korea via the USS Lake Champlain. They sailed through the Mediterranean Sea and onto the eastern Korean coast. After arriving, VC-4 flew a few patrols from the ship, but it was soon apparent that the planes were not well suited for the ship's wooden deck. The exhaust nozzles on the F-3D were angled slightly down, and during takeoff, the jet's exhaust scorched the TQ deck of the ship. After each takeoff, the deckhands would rush out onto the deck and put out the smoldering fires. After several of these fire drills, the ship's captain insisted that VC-4 be transferred to the mainland and join up with VMFN 513. 36. On the 23rd of June 1953, VC-4 foreign joined with VMFN 513 at K6 Airbase south of Seoul. The mission of VC-4 foreign, as directed by Commander Task Force 91, and as employed as an integral part of Marine All-Weather Fighter Squadron 513 based ashore, providing night fighter escort for U.S. Air Force medium bomber B-50 strikes on targets in North Korea and providing night combat air patrols in the Chodo Island area, extending from the Haeju Peninsula to the Yalu River. 37. One F-3D, piloted by LTJG Bob Bick and his RO. Chief Petty Officer Linton Smith, was lost to enemy fire on the 2nd of July 1953. This aircraft was part of the detachment from Fleet Composite Squadron for VC-4 at NAS Atlantic City. 38. F-3D-2, landing at K6 Air Base, Korea 1952. Operational comments June 1953 through July 1953. The following are excerpts from Carrier Air Group 4. Action report of VC-4 detachment for foreign for period the 19th of June 1953 to the 27th of July 1953. 1. The radar equipment in the F-3D-2 is excellent. However, the relatively low speed and slow rate of climb of the aircraft prohibits exploiting the advantage of the excellent radar coverage against high-speed enemy jets. 2. The extreme visibility of the glow from the engine's tailpipes offers an easy target for a pursuer and a detriment to the evasiveness of the aircraft. 3. The near vertical forward windshield and the lack of windshield wipers limits the visibility of the pilot on a final GCA approach in heavy rain to the curved side panel. Under such conditions of heavy rain, forward visibility is extremely poor. 37. While the Skyke might lack the swept wings and high subsonic performance of the MiG-15, its powerful fire control system enabled it to find and shoot down other fighters at night, while most MiG-15s could only be guided by ground-based radar. Post-Korean War, F-3D Skyke Knight carrying AAMN to Sparrow I missiles during tests in the early 1950s. F-3D Skyke Knight firing AAMN to Sparrow I missile during a test in 1950. Following the Korean War, the F-3D was gradually replaced by more powerful aircraft with better radar systems. Its stability and spacious fuselage made the aircraft easily adaptable to other roles. The F-3D, under the designations F-3D-1N and F-3D-2M, was used to support development of a number of air-to-air missile systems during the 1950s, including the Sparrow I-2 and III-N Meteor missiles. 39. The Sparrow missile was developed at Pacific Missile Test Center and early test firings were conducted at Naval Ordnance Test Station China Lake. During 1954, the F-3D-2M became the first Navy jet aircraft to be fitted with an operational air-to-air missile. The Sparrow I-4041, an all-weather day, night beyond visual range missile that used beam riding guidance for the aircrew to control the missile's track. Only 28 aircraft, 12 F-3D on MIS 42 and 16 F-3D-2 MIS 43 were modified to use the missiles. In the late 1950s, a number of Marine F-3D-2s were reconfigured as electronic warfare aircraft and were accordingly redesignated F-3D-Q, later F-10B. Several aircraft were also converted for use as trainers and were thus redesignated F-3D-T. Some of these aircraft were outfitted with a single 10 inches photography camera mounted in the tail section for aerial reconnaissance. Citation needed. During 1959, Ed Heinemann proposed that Douglas refurbish retired F-3Ds for civil use, reasoning that the former military aircraft could be offered at a much lower price than newly designed business jets, such as the Lockheed Jetstar. Some work on the initiative was undertaken, but it was cancelled after it was determined that the stored aircraft were in a generally poor condition, making their refurbishment more costly and forecast. 44. When the U.S. Navy issued a requirement for a fleet defense missile fighter in 1959, Douglas responded with the F-6D Missileer, which was essentially an updated and enlarged F-3D that would carry the AAMN-10 Eagle long-range air-to-air missile. With its most important characteristics being its large fuel capacity, its considerable time on station, a crew of 2, and sophisticated electronics rather than speed or maneuverability. This concept, which retained the straight wings in an age of supersonic combat aircraft, was soon cancelled as it was felt that the aircraft would not be able to effectively defend itself against more nimble fighters. 45-46. The supersonic General Dynamics Grumman F-111D was subsequently developed to carry long-range missiles, was cancelled due to excessive weight and changing tactical requirements. The Grumman F-1 for Tomcat later entered service in this role. Skyke Knights continued in service through the 1960s in a gold-white color scheme, by which point many of their contemporaries had long since been retired. During 1962, at which point the U.S. Navy and U.S. Air Force unified their designation systems, the F-3D-1 was redesignated F-10A while the F-3D-2 was redesignated F-10B. Vietnam War. The F-10B Buno 127,041 of VNC-J1 over Vietnam in 1966. This aircraft was downed by an SA-2 missile from the North Vietnamese 61st Battalion, 236th Missile Regiment, over Nguyen Province on the 18th of March 1966. Coordinates 191958 and 105059E. The crew, 1 Stult Brent Davis and 1 Stult Everett McPherson, were killed. The Skyke Knight was the only Korean War jet fighter that also flew in Vietnam. The F-10BS served in the electronic warfare role during the Vietnam War until 1969. The large interior provided ample room for electronic equipment. U.S. Marine Composite Reconnaissance Squadron 1 VMCJ-1 Golden Hawks began operating the F-10B on the 17th of April 1965 under Lt. Col. Wes Corman Da Nang Air Base, Republic of Vietnam with 6 aircraft. 47 No more than 10 F-10BS were in Vietnam at one time. The Electronic Warfare Skype was a valuable electronic countermeasure asset to JAN the SA to surface-to-air missiles tracking and guidance systems. 5 VMC-J1 made history when its F-10BS conducted the first U.S. AMC airborne radar jamming mission on the 29th of April 1965 to support on the 27th of July 1965. For F-10BS also supported a massive strike on missile sites outside Hanoi. Many U.S. aircraft were lost to SA to South in Vietnam. The electronic attack on the associated radar systems was known as fog-bound missions. The F-3D also dropped chaff over the radar sites. 5. The first F-10B lost in Vietnam was to an SA-2 on the 18th of March 1966, while 4 more F-10BS were lost in Vietnam to accidents and unknown causes. 47. Their mission was gradually assumed by the more capable EA-6A electric intruder and electronic warfare, electronic countermeasures EW, ECM variant of the Grumman A-6 intruder attack bomber. 48. The F-10B Sky continued to fly lower threat EW missions until they were withdrawn from South Vietnam in October 1969. 47. The U.S. Navy's EKA-3 Spy Warrior and the USS Douglas RB-66 destroyer also assumed electronic missions. During May 1970, the U.S. Marine Corps retired the last of its F-10BS. Post-Vietnam, the U.S. Navy continued to use the F-10s for avionics systems testing. The F-10 was used as a radar testbed to develop the APQ-7 to radar. The nose of an F or Phantom was added to the front of an F-10B. Another F-10 had a modified radome installed by the radar manufacturer Westinghouse. Yet another F-10B was modified with the nose from an A for Skyhawk. 49. In 1968, 3 Skyknights were transferred to the U.S. Army. These aircraft were operated by the Raytheon Corporation at Holloman, AFB, where they were used testing at the White Sands Missile Range into the 1980s. They were the last flyable Skyknights. 50. Variants: F-10B Skyknight of VMC-J1 at Da Nang, South Vietnam, in the second half of the 1960s. Proposed F-3D X F-3D1. Prototype aircraft: to Westinghouse J3 for WE2 for turbojet engines of 3000 lbf 13 kilonewtons, APQ-35 search and target acquisition radar for 20 mm cannon. 3 built. 16. F-3D1, 2-seat all-weather day or night fighter aircraft, powered by 3000 lbf 13 kilonewtons. Westinghouse J3 for WE-32 turbojet engines, tail warning radar, ECM, and other electronics that added over 5,000 pounds 2,300 kilograms of weight. 28 built. First flight, the 13th of February 1950. 16. F-3D1M. 12 F-3D1S were converted into missile-on test aircraft used in the development of the AIM-7 F-3D2, second production version. Initially powered by 3,400 lbf 15 kilonewtons, Westinghouse J3 for WE-36 and later by 3,600 lbf 16 kilonewtons, Westinghouse J3 for WE-38 turbojet engines for 190 kN 560 miles per hour, 910 kilometers per hour at 20,000 feet 6,100 meters, equipped with wing spoilers, autopilot and an improved Westinghouse and APQ-36 radar. 237 built. First flight, the 14th of February 1951. 516. F-3D-B. 1 F-3D-1 was used for special armament test in 1952. F-3D-2M16, F-3D-2S were converted into missile-armed aircraft. The F-3D-2Ms were armed with AIM-7 Sparrow air-to-air missiles. F-3D-2Q35, F-3D-2S were converted into electronic warfare aircraft. F-3D-T. 5 F-3D-2S were converted into night fighter training aircraft. F-3D-T2. 55 F-3D-2S were used as radar operator trainers and electronic warfare aircraft. F-3D-3. Unbuilt project, intended to be an advanced version, incorporating swept wings. F-10A. 1960 to redesignation of the F-3D1. F-10B. 1960 to redesignation of the F-3D2. F-10B. 1960 to redesignation of the F-3D2Q. MF-10A. 1960 to redesignation of the F3D-1N. MF-10B, 1960 to redesignation of the F3D-2M. TF-10B, 1960 to redesignation of the